And I am done. I just finished up reading On Stranger Tides by Travis Riddle. And I really like this book. I give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. And I very much recommend it. So, you probably haven't heard of this book, and you probably haven't heard of it because it is by an author who's not very big yet, and this book has very few reviews. So I urge you to watch this review, and I hope that it's interesting to you because I really think this author deserves a lot more attention than they're currently getting. So this book is essentially Pokemon, but in book form, with a lot of different differences. But it definitely takes that Pokemon premise of catching and battling creatures, and it's great. I mean, I finished this book in a very short amount of time. It's not very long. The pages is kind of deceptive because I read it on Kindle, obviously, but it flies faster than you would think for like a 400-page book. It's probably more like a 200-page book, realistically for word count. But I finished this book and I thought, how has it taken 25 plus years for somebody to write a Pokemon-inspired progression fantasy book? And if you're not familiar with that term progression fantasy, it's kind of a more popularized term that's coming along as more books are in this genre, but it's for books where like a character continues rising and rising with more power and more power throughout the book, and throughout the series. It's usually very like long series. The most popular one that's out there that everybody's heard of is Cradle by Will White, where at the end of the book the character is more powerful than they started in all the books, and that's definitely true here. The whole idea is that you have this main character who is wants to become the champion at battling these Jekua. Jekua is the series name, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I hope I'm not botching it, but it's Jekua, and he is just when he starts the book, he hasn't caught any, and he's just at the point where he wants to start. And you can see that end goal of his, which is to win the giant tournament that he has no hope at getting into, let alone winning. And when you read this, that by the last book, the author said he wants to write 6, that last book he's going to win the tournament. It's just, that's the way progression works. But it's really fun to watch him at the bottom and slowly start rising up that. And this, it's not, it's clearly a Pokemon inspired. He writes, he jokingly writes at the beginning of the book when they say like, who's this book for? And he writes Charmander. And at the end of the book, he talks about how Pokemon clearly was the inspiration for this. But there's differences too. And I don't think that the differences are in there just to be different. I think that they actually help the book significantly. I don't want to ruin the main difference on the way these battles work, because I think it's fun to learn about yourself when reading this. But just note that there are major differences in the way that Pokemon... it's not Pokemon, but the way that they're caught and the way that they're battled. It's different, and it's fun. It's really fun. The whole book has this video game-inspired background to it, Like the main character can drink these special sodas to increase his mana. And mana's not just thrown in there randomly. It makes sense, and it has this kind of like religious aspect to the book that goes into it, but the mana makes sense for the book. But he can recharge himself with these power-ups, and it's clearly like he's like leveling up the characters, not literally leveling up, but it's like that. They get more moves as they get more as they get more attached to their person that caught them, and it's really the word I keep using in this, but this is a fun book. You need to know when going into this book what it's not. This is not going to be that classic intense fantasy book with a lot of twists, or it's not going to have this flowing prose. But what it is it's fun. The world building is awesome. The magic system, it's not really magic, but I'll call it that for what it is. But the magic system is awesome. It's unique, certainly not unique for media, because clearly it's playing off Pokemon, but it's unique for books, and it's a low stakes book. At least in this first book, it's not trying to become bigger than it is. It's just trying to better himself, this main character. And I enjoyed that. Time just flies when you're reading this book. You have a smile on your face. There's funny dialogue between the characters, and it's just it's nice to like take this book, read it outside, enjoy the sun, and just have a good time. Which really is, what more do you want in a book? The negatives that I had with this book are not significant. But one of them, the most significant of them, is this book is too short. And maybe I have my own bias and that I like big, dense books. But I would have loved if this book was, twice the length or more. It feels like it goes too quickly. And I know that's going to be remedied. I've actually been messaging the author of this book, and he mentioned that the next book is going to be longer. And I think he said like the third or fourth book is like twice the size of this first one. So it looks like it's moving in that positive direction, which I appreciate. One thing that frustrated me a bit is there's no map in this book. And that sucks because, I'm somebody that really likes to see supplemental material. I love to eat in maps. I just finished reviewing The Forgotten Moon by Brian Lee Durfee earlier this month. And that book does everything right when it comes to supplemental material. It gives you background information. It gives you this gorgeous map of a world that's way bigger than you're ever going to get to, but you feel a part of the world. I would have loved that here. They keep talking about these 5 or 6 different islands and going to different cities within the islands, and I would love to just see that and feel a little bit more connected to the characters in that way. As I was reading the book, I kept thinking, I would love to have pictures of these Jekua so I could really visualize what they're trying to tell me. And when I finished the book, I stupidly should have realized this, but there are some pictures at the end of the book. But there's only like 3. And there's like, probably 8 to 10 different Jekua described in this book. And I would have loved if they would have expanded that and showed all of them. And just kind of expanded that a little bit. Books don't have to put pictures in them to make them good. But for this kind of book, I feel like it would really amplify it. He clearly did the right thing by putting him in there, but just keep going on that trend. So I highly recommend this book for anybody. If you've played Pokemon as a kid or watched the show, you're going to love this book. If you're into low-stakes fantasy, you're going to love this book. If you're into progression fantasy, you're going to love this book. And if you're not into any of those things, there's a chance you might love this book too, so give it a shot. So that's my review, and I hope you enjoyed watching.